I'll tell you why I like to come back to Pune, okay? My parents have very extreme views of what hospitality for kids who have come back home for a few days looks like, okay?
Achha.
So my mom's view is this, which is what you are having. Like great food, simple, homemade, all of that. My dad, on the other hand, has a more, he would have fit beautifully in like in McKinsey. His view is कि यार Sid आएगा तो we need hot towel and cold towel for him. There should be like rolled. There should be rolled hot towel. When they did the renovation of the house, Dad had said that guest bathroom should have जो रिट्स कार्ल्टन में जो यूरिनल्स होते हैं ना वैसा यूरिनल होना चाहिए लाइक धोएगा लाइक वो नहीं पता मेरे को
मैंने कहा ये घर है होटल नहीं आई वांट अ होम टू बी होम एंड नॉट अ होटल
मैंने कहा एक इसमें
द पर्सन हु इज विजिटिंग
फ्रिज में रख देते हैं 15-20 टॉवल और प्रेशर कुकर में गर्म कर देंगे ठंड में
प्रेशर कुकर में गर्म करेंगे और 15-20 टॉवल फ्रीजर में रखे रहेंगे सो एक
One of the pet peeves of viewers of the Barbershop and my mom also is कि तू इतना खाता क्यों है उस एपिसोड पे and I get a lot of trolls for this by the way मत खाया करो क्या
खा लो और फिर बैठो
See, I got hungry in the middle and there are snacks right there so you just feel you can get away with it and then while we are shooting this I'm thinking shit this is good.
It obviously does a lot to loosen people up.
Fully. So we started this new third dimension for the barbershop called Uncut Gems.
oh yeah
Okay? Where we are saying that founders always get glory. Sometimes it's backdated, sometimes it's backloaded, sometimes it's front loaded. But founders are considered to be the and for good reason, they deservedly so, but it's not, they are a necessary but not sufficient condition for success. The more kind of under the radar but equally critical elements are people who join early and make it huge. For example, in the case of Bombay Shaving Company, Maninder and Shanky. So we want to find, so people like Sid and Rahul are consistently known in the industry for being outstanding people leaders. Which means that they are, they will invest in people over a long period of time. So if you talk to people who have worked at Treebo, that's what they will say about it. So we want to say that there have been people who join very early. When the vision of the business is possibly not, it's there, but it's not at all fructified in any meaningful way.
Correct.
But you make it your own mission, and then you become a part of it, and you make the founders better.
They're actually founders.
They're founders.
Exactly.
Salaried entrepreneurs, salaried owners.
Salaried owners.
That's what Deepak Parekh called because he was that for HDFC. So we are talking to Akhil today. So it will be Sid and Akhil,
okay
and I will facilitate that discussion in the barbershop, talking about their journey building Treebo together and what Akhil did to kind of get motivated to be a part of it. And it's been like 7-8 years now.
It's such an incredible privilege to get to work with these people.
Yeah.
You know, that's when you reached out and we spoke about Uncut Gems for the first time. I was so amazed and like
Your reaction was instant.
vigorously in the idea ki boss,
it's great
this has to be done.
Yeah.
Not only because these people deserve some kind of recognition or visibility or their stories deserve to be told, but also because for people to realize, your show is predominantly appealing to or is meant to inspire aspiring founders. For them to realize, yeah, boss, this is an important angle for you to think about. Often it becomes about the co-founder, the idea, raising capital, etc. Right? But if you are able to crack in your early years, early months, if you're able to crack a small handful of such people, and of course you wouldn't know it at that time because who would? I mean, I never knew Akhil would stick around for 7.5 years and still going strong.
Yeah.
But if you get that right, I mean, this has been arguably the biggest strength for us to have a few of these people just being there.
just being
And they carry the load, no?
They carry the load.
They carry the load, they build out the company, like they make founders so much better.
Totally. And I feel that the commitment from their side, which was the other thought that immediately rung in my head when you were also giving examples of Bombay Shaving Company, and I'm sure some such people in all startups, the commitment is almost irrational.
Yeah.
Irrationally.
It's irrational. You know, you would think that as founders, of course, you should stay committed to the idea.
The equity upside, no?
There's equity upside, and you know, when you come a certain distance in the startup, you think, yeah, okay, now you're closer to an outcome, so you should stay put, whatever. So in a way, a founder's commitment, a co-founder's commitment is whatever, right? In a way, given out. But for these people, especially when they're like headhunters knocking on your doors,
Every day,
whatever,
yeah.
fancy titles, 30% hike, 40%, and just the commitment is irrational.
Yeah.
I have no idea, and I you know, like
क्यों करना है?
क्यों यार?
Actually,
But
working
it's such a
with
privilege
people,
that they
yeah.
do.
Working with
It also kind of it makes you feel more responsible towards your own
Exactly.
company.
Yes.
मेरे को बहुत बार लगता है कि यार इनको देख के मेरे को लगता है कि shit यार I cannot lack
You have to do right by them.
them
Exactly.
when you're
And
building.
also, you know, Shantanu, the family, and I'll give an instance, I don't know if she remembers or not. In 2002, when we founded Mojo Networks and we did try fundraise here. Now, fundraise 20 years back didn't exist. And we had a disruptive, inventive idea and looking for $5 million at least. So, you know, it didn't happen. And then 8 महीने की तनख्वाह है बैंक में for employees. उसके बाद फिर you know, we'll have to close the company. And so we decided to go to US. And then first time I told her that this may be my first failure, and this was inside this kitchen. And she was cooking. And so she doesn't even look back. She says, आज तक तुम fail हुए हो क्या? मैंने कहा नहीं, I may not have succeeded to my expectation, but I have not failed. तो फिर किस बात की परेशानी है? You know, that gave me the booster shot. And so sometimes I also feel families.
Lina dekhe, huh? Like the confidence is just so. The banality of the confidence is just amazing, huh? कि मतलब.
That don't deserve a head
इनको failure वगैरह तो पता नहीं सब्जी जल्दी नहीं चाहिए.
हाँ, सब्जी. And
मैं भी
you
तो
know,
fail नहीं होना चाहिए.
Exactly.
and I tell you, she is. You know, we have had
Amazing.
telephonic interviews so many times,
Yeah.
and she can tell you exactly when I'm closing the candidate on the other
Oh,
side.
exactly the same with my wife.
So what she
overheard and
does,
she's
you
like,
know?
ये reject है ना? You didn't even hear the other side. Like तेरे reaction से तेरे पता चल रहा है.
and वो भी non-verbal reactions.
अच्छा ये क्या है मालूम क्या? She'll do this. She'll start doing this, huh? She'll do. मेरे तुम भागो यार.
सर हो गया, ले लिया बंदा.
But I think you know, as Shantanu said. what
By the
you
way,
said-
sorry I'm interrupting you. I don't know. At some point, and you pay me when you actually do it, you should do an episode on this. You should do a series on the family.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
My God, these stories, right?
Yeah.
Like the spouse. I mean, I guess in 9 out of 10 cases it would be the spouses, but you know,
Mothers?
parents,
Parents,
absolutely,
parents.
right? Maybe sometimes even
In
a
fact, in
sibling or whoever.
Mojo first 3-4 years until the company was very infancy, we used to do a annual event for families and anyone that influences, because they were taking a bigger risk.
100%.
Your son is joining a
100%.
nondescript company.
Yeah.
Your daughter is joining a company
Startup.
that we don't
She's
know.
doing a good job.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So we used to bring them together, and I used to particularly ask, is there someone who does not know English? You might see a grandmother.
Of course. Yeah.
तो हम मालूम करते थे
हाँ.
और you know, if there was one person who only knew Tamil, we'll make sure that
Yeah.
translated. See, your concern for them, you're caring for them.
Totally.
That person who goes home every day has a life easy at home.
Totally. You know, talking about Akhil, I was saying that he was one of those few people who, in the very beginning itself, operated from a very strong belief in what we were trying to do, and that's not always common to how a lot of these journeys start. And funnily enough, his profile didn't really fit the profile of the role that we wanted to hire him for.
And what was the initial role?
So we were at that time. This was very early. So this we are talking about at the turn of 2015, 2016, right? So Treebo came to life June 2015, and you know, initially we were only in Bangalore, and then we gradually started to build out other cities. So we were at that time hiring a few of these city GMs, as we used to call the role back in the day. and we thought Pune would be an important city to launch, so we were looking for someone to head Pune for us, right? And a GM role back in the day was a role where you basically are head of the city, so you look after everything, adding properties, sales, operations, all of it. So we met Akhil, and we felt that in terms of experience thoda kam hai, or thoda different type ka experience hai. The other city GMs we had hired were of a slightly different pedigree, slightly higher experience. So we were a little bit on the fence, to be honest, right? But Akhil was not. Akhil was very clear, कि अरे करना है. And he then pursued this with a lot of interest, and he made sure that he was one thing that was evident about him from that day itself was just this very disciplined approach, a very sincere kind of a follow-up, and that you can imagine for early founders looking to build the initial team, something like that can be a very endearing trait, right? Absolutely. So I in hindsight, I think it was at that time purely driven by just the sincerity that he showed, which is so important to early founders. Here, aapko pitch nahi maar rahi, someone else is showing a lot of interest in what you are doing, and therefore we said, here maybe we will have a slightly different designation for him. We were like absolute stingy with that part, right? And we were like, not fully there perhaps on the profile, etc., on the experience. So why don't we start him so we called him a Senior Manager Operations Pune, wow, rather than saying City GM Pune, which was marginally different from the other role, but we thought that more or less, so we thought that it will allow us to see him in action and then give him that role. And of course,
you didn't hire the City GM above him?
No. So it was more like, you start, anyway the city is to be launched, right? So you get started and then we will see you in action. Of course, it was only a matter of a few months before we realized how stupid we were to be underestimating his potential. But and he's been around since then, so more than 7 years now, for a company which is just about turning 8 years.
Wow.
Akhil is a surprisingly multi-talented guy. Whether it is an extremely challenging situation or an extremely rewarding situation, the guy is just calm and composed. So I told Akhil Kier, you are someone who has great communication skills, one of the best in the organization. So would you be willing to do this? And the thing with Akhil is, he never says no.
Akhil, I think the entire journey of entrepreneurship, building companies from scratch, indexes more on capital, investors, the idea itself, the market, the founders, etc. That's what gets covered in the press. That's what people read about. That's what books are written about, and so on, right? But our audience is, is amongst the average age of our audience is roughly 25 years. So 25 years, and many of them, and if you read the comments on our episodes or the way people engage with us, many of them are enthralled and excited by the idea of being in the startup ecosystem. Okay, many of them want to be founders, many of them want to be part of founder journeys, many of them want to be angel investors. There are a whole host of people, like they want to do things. But the fundamental desire to be part of a company that started from scratch and to be a part of its journey is very palpable. But what people don't really realize to the fullest extent possible, including me, I'll let Sid speak for himself, is that journey is defined fundamentally by the generals that join the army in the very formative years of the company. People who make the vision their own, people who sharpen the vision for the founders, people who execute in ways that show mirrors to sometimes the founders, sometimes to customers, sometimes to suppliers, depends, right? Sure. But those people then become, as we called it, centers of gravity in the organization, and the organization starts revolving around them very naturally. It's never by design. ऐसा कभी नहीं होता कि तुम org structure बना लो और ऐसा नहीं होता. Like it's just by nature of work, drive, pull, etc. that they do that, and then they shape the journey of that company immeasurably, right? And Uncut Gems is a way to kind of bring those stories out, because those war stories are actually where the real business build happens. And Sid is someone who I respect deeply for being a people leader, not only at Treebo but even before Treebo, right? Someone who is invested. I have kind of benefited from it personally, but I've also seen him do it with a lot of others. And I thought, being a part of the Treebo story, his immediate push was, we should get Akhil on this. And I said, I completely agree with you. So thank you so much for coming in and sharing your story. And I love what you said when we started, which is 7 years, 7+ years at Treebo, you have been head down, executing in and out, and continue to do that, right? And Sid calls your team like just, Akhil clones who kind of follow him, and kind of he shaped them in a lot of ways. But isn't that tiring?
Well, firstly, thank you for doing this. It's very humbling. Thank you, Sid, for nominating me. And thank you for picking Treebo. Well, yes, it is tiring, but then when you realize what you're getting in return, I think it's worth it, right? I mean, I get to spend better half of my day with people whom I call my friends, or काम हो जाता है साथ में, right? I mean, when you hang out with friends, I mean, work happens to happen. So, I mean, and there's nothing else that I'd rather do, right? I mean, than spending time with friends and getting paid for it, perhaps.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Tell me about, how did you find out about Rahul and Sid and what they were doing back in the day?
Yeah. So that's an interesting story. So I had come from a failed startup, so I was let go. The previous startup, we raised about $5 million and we burnt it in less than 6 months, right? And so
You must have been paid well.
clearly, yes. Perhaps. Perhaps. So yeah. So and that's when it and I had, before that I had a stint of a very short stint at a couple of startups, right? And one thing that I was pretty sure that the next startup that I would want to be a part of, I think it was all about the founders primarily and the business, right? So and back in the day, I still have this good friend called Vijay Sharma who connected us, and I was just chatting with him, and I was we were talking like, I mean, are there any founders who know what they're doing, who are humble, who respect people, value people, right? And who maybe not born with a silver spoon, right? दुनिया देखी है, struggle देखे हैं, who might understand. And that's when I came across Treebo, and I got connected with Sidharth and Rahul, and within like 5 days we had 2 rounds of interview with Sidharth and Rahul, and after that it was a long wait. I waited for almost 45 days. I hounded them. In as many days we exchanged 40-50 emails, right? And I just
Most
wouldn't.
of them were written by you.
Of course, all of them
To be
were. Of course, right? So I wasn't relenting, and I knew that once I spoke to both Sid and Rahul, I knew that this is exactly the kind of people.
But tell me why. I mean, by the way, of course, looking back, huge gratitude for your perseverance, for your belief. But I was telling Shantanu about it a short while back, and I was wondering why at that time. You hadn't worked with us.
Sure.
You had perhaps heard a few good things from Vijay or other people about
Yeah.
us. And yes, you had interacted once with me, once with Rahul.
Sure.
And of course, what type of business we were building.
Yeah.
But then, what drove that perseverance, that belief that this is the place I need to? Surely it was not desperation for a job, because the market was great even at that time. So why?
Sure. Well, I mean, based on the limited interaction that we had, right, and what I'd heard from Vijay and some of the other folks, and also the space, right, hospitality, real estate. So that was pretty sure, and I always say, right, I mean, I make a living out of reading people, right, so I think I read you well back then.
But was it one thing, or was it just the package of the both of them, or was it like one thing that struck a chord?
I think both of them, right, and I think one of the things that I think it was Vijay, or maybe I don't remember who was it, right, and I still remember, and I think I shared this with you, right, and they said this, right, जब तक सिद्धार्थ ट्रीबो में है, ट्रीबो का कोई बाल भी बांका नहीं कर सकता, और जब तक राहुल ट्रीबो के साथ जुड़ा है, ट्रीबो कुछ गलत नहीं कर सकता, and that stuck in my head, right, and I mean over the course of last 7.5 years, right, and still think that it's, you know, truer
Accurate.
words have never been spoken. I
Oh,
think.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I would, but to kind of experience it for 7.5 years is
Yeah,
is real, no?
So see, I mean, for majority of our journey, we always fought this battle कि हमें पता नहीं रहता है कि हम survive करेंगे कि नहीं करेंगे. So, and by some miracle, by something, right? I mean, we still managed to, you know, come on the other side, right?
Did you think you will stick around for so long?
Yeah, I was gonna ask
back
you.
then.
Yeah,
You did?
I did. I mean, I knew that I would want to stick around wherever I worked, unless and until ऐसा कुछ हो जाए कि see, it's not making sense, it's not fun anymore. So, I mean, I never, even my previous jobs, right? Even my previous jobs, ऐसे कभी नहीं सोचा था कि this is going to be a 1 year assignment or this is going to be like a 6 month stint, right? I mean, when you commit, you go all in, right? And then if things don't work out, they don't work out.
Amazing. Tell me the one thing that has surprised you over the last 7-8 years. And of course, for our viewers, Sid and I kind of touched upon it superficially in the car on the drive here, which is the Treebo journey
Yeah.
has not been an easy one, just given the impact of COVID
Sure.
on hospitality, right? Whether it's restaurants or whether it's hotels or businesses, and you guys have kind of powered your way through it. You guys always had access to capital, but there was a very heavily funded competitor in the market when it came to supply, when it came to people, when it came to just competing in the affordable bracket, right? It's not been an easy journey by any measure. And Sid spoke about how sometimes he derived strength from colleagues who sometimes would give it and founders lose strength more often than one would like to admit. But you've been around for 7-8 years, you would probably know this more. What gave you the belief that the company will sail through, or did you just say we'll take it a day at a time?
I mean, if I were to look back, ऐसे there have been times, right? I'd be lying if I said कि हाँ सब कुछ ठीक ही हो जाएगा. There have been times when the future was very uncertain and we didn't know क्या होगा. But I think the broad belief was that जो भी होगा, I mean, it would only be after, you know, everybody is given their 100%, and whatever happens, everybody is going to be treated very fairly at the end of the day, right? So, I mean, we've had our share of troubles, right? And unfortunately, we've had to let go of some of our colleagues, but always we've ensured that, you know, they were taken care of to the best of our abilities. We helped them find other opportunities. So many of our colleagues, right? I mean, Treebo is famous for having this ghar wapsi, right? We have more than hundreds of Treebs who are now in their second or perhaps even the third stint with Treebo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So ये पता था कि अच्छे लोगों के साथ काम कर रहे हैं तो अच्छा होगा. And see, at the end of the day, when you're working in a startup, there is some risk involved, right? And I always say this to myself or anybody who asks me कि startup में क्यों काम करना चाहिए, अगर if it fails, what happens, right? And then there's this proverb that I derive strength from, right? जो चिड़िया पेड़ की टहनी पे बैठती है, उसे जितना डर टहनी टूटने का है, उससे ज़्यादा भरोसा अपने पंखों पे है. So I think at the end of the day, you are playing a high risk, high reward game, right? And you signed up for it.
So Sid speaks about you in terms of unrelenting sincerity from the time you hounded them for the job, for example, to the way you executed in this phase pre-COVID. But there is a certain amount of irrational optimism, one might call it. One might just call it kind of tunnel vision to a goal, or one might call it just intrinsic personality. Are you like this with other goals in your life, which may be professional or personal? Are you like this when you are learning an instrument, or if you are playing a sport, or were you like this when it came to school, or is this something that is special to Treebo? And with this?
So I think I've always been a little, you know, adamant. Once I set my mind to something, I really want to achieve that. That's always been the case. Unfortunately, I was not like that when it came to studies.
Because you didn't set your mind to it.
Yeah. So, but see, I mean, you look at it from purely, you know, if I were to optimize for myself, right? मेरे को पता है कि 1 तारीख को सैलरी आ रही है, पैसा किसी और का है, जिम्मेदारी किसी और की है, मुझे तो सैलरी आ रही है, right? At the end of the day, what do I have to lose? So at best, right? I mean, and the experience of going through all of this, right? It's you cannot put a price tag on that. जो सीखने मिला उन 8 महीनों में, you just cannot put.
क्या सीखने मिला बताओ मेरे को exactly, because this is what everyone says. Execution is crucial. Execution is crucial. But you guys took a 6.5 crore burning business per month to near profitability. Got smacked in the face by COVID, which is totally external. But what do you, when you say we out executed everyone else?
Yeah.
What did you exactly do? Was this, and you use the word, I don't know whether you use the word brutal. I don't know what you use, a very specific word. We'll look at it in the in the role. But you used a word for that rigor of execution. What exactly is it?
See, I mean, pre-July 2019, we were under the assumption that this business needed this amount of capital to operate, right? Or we needed to incur these kind of expenses to run the show. It was only when that fundraise failed that we realized कि नहीं यार business तो मतलब इससे कम पैसों में भी चल सकता है, इतना खर्चा नहीं करना पड़ेगा. And I think that was, even though it was a very painful event, but in the hindsight, I'm glad that it happened, because when I think about it, right, had we raised those 40-50 mil, I think we would have continued to be, foolish about it, inefficient, and we would have died a very, cruel death.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that that fundraise failed. It taught us that this business can be run more efficiently. It forced us to take a look at our cost structures. I remember once we decided on that day, I think it was 5th of July if I'm not mistaken, the first 1.5 hours or 2 hours we just deliberated that should we just continue doing this or should we just pack our bags and go home. And after much deliberation, after 1.5-2 hours, we said we'll give it another shot. And obviously the next thing for us to do was to look at all of our expenses, right, and just find out which were the unnecessary expenses and take actions, right. And we've taken actions as small as the ceramic cups that were being used to serve coffee in the office. उसका breakage कुछ 2000 रुपए का होता था. Said we don't need ceramic cups. Right? And that 2000 rupee, right, in a burn of 6.5 crore, 2000 rupees is inconsequential, right?
Yeah.
It's a rounding off error. But just the fact that no money, right, not even a rupee is small enough, right? And if we were to take that detailed lens, right, अगर वो microscope से देखें तो ऐसे पता चला कितनी जगह inefficiencies बैठी हैं business में.
What makes Akhil special?
Maybe his way of presenting himself that makes him different from others, because when you look at him for the first time, you won't realize what kind of capacity that he holds in himself. But then once you start interacting with him, you would come to know that ki bhai ye to bomb hai.
The way he leads his team, the way he have always taken care of us in the way that we work in the working community.
Akhil sir being an absolute meticulous person, he has to do everything perfectly, and he expects the same from all his team members and everything. But at the same time, he is like a friend, he's like a mentor, and he is a cool boss, I must say. So that is what makes him special.
So he's someone who's like a brother from another mother. So that's why it's special for me.
What amazes me about this is that, think about the journey for Akhil, right? And I don't know whether you think about this way. I'm called to Bangalore. This looks like the twilight of the fundraise is over, and now the capital is going to come in. So 10 of us have to kind of figure out how to deploy it. That's probably what this meeting is about. So that's the expectation. He enters the meeting, realizes that the reality is the complete opposite. Responds with energy, which I'm sure would have filled you and Rahul with a very different kind of confidence, right?
Yeah.
Fuck, this is amazing. So he responds with energy rather, because it's very easy for people at that moment to fall.
Correct. Or at the very least, say, I need time to process this.
Correct.
मैं तो कुछ और ही सोच के आया था.
Correct. But just fuck it.
Yeah.
At the airport, rallies his team, realizes from the drive from the office to the airport, ki boss, this is what I need to do. Here are the 4 or 5 people who are important. We need to pick up our arms. Those in are in, those not in. So you have kind of played out what the next few months are going to look like, which is, by the way, strategically very difficult to do. In the face of crisis, to plan.
Correct.
And then figure out how to have tough chats with your team is not easy. Like I take a long time to find the right words in these situations. For you, it probably came naturally. You're a good crisis, kind of thrive on it in a way, right? And then to align, weed the strong from the ones who don't want to do it with you, find that team and then kind of execute over the next 6 months. It's an incredible skill set. I think the one thing that gets lost is the best people in startups, at least for me, are people who filter solutions up and solve problems down. Like when there are senior people in the team who come to me with complaints, once or twice is fine, I'll solve it for you. If that's a consistent thing, then I'm like, boss, you're filtering problems up and solving down. That's not your job. Because then you're not solving the real problems. Real problems are at an upper level.
True.
If you're filtering solutions up, which in this case you have clearly done, and then solved and then be honest about the problems down, then I can imagine that being like massive unlock for you and Rahul in terms of just confidence. Ki boss,
Absolutely.
kar lenge अपन इसको.
I think there is something to be said about, as Ben Horowitz puts it, right? I mean, he calls it the wartime CEO and the peacetime CEO, but screw the CEO, it holds true for any leader.
Any leader, yeah.
I think one thing that I would assume would be common, I've certainly seen it at Treebo. One thing that is absolutely common in people who have been there for a long time and who operate with this feeling of irrational belief and determination and an amazing confidence and courage in themselves and in the mission. All of those guys are great wartime leaders.
Yeah.
Because of course, people who've been around for a shorter time, who have not had to go through the downs and have mostly enjoyed the ups, would end up being good peacetime leaders. They would have also contributed immensely, no doubt about it. But in that moment, it would have only taken a wartime leader to say, "Yaar, airport pahunchte hi na, I want my 4 lieutenants to now be there, for me to now do the next level messaging."
Yeah.
And I think, Akhil, you've one remarkable quality about you, and would love to hear about it from your perspective, is just how you have built your own set of lieutenants who've also been around for more than 7 years and who also have this, at least from my point of view, this irrational belief, not just in Treebo, but in you.
Yeah. And those may be difficult to delineate also.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Akhil is Treebo in a way. Sorry, but yeah, you should talk about that.
I mean, I think I've been fortunate to have, a very good team. I think firstly, people who really want to work hard and who are aligned with what we're doing, and who've realized over the last 7 years that, this is a place where they're not going to get shortchanged.
What do you do that gets the guy to feel, yaar, is it a dosti thing? What is it?
I mean, like I said, right? I mean, my best friends are from Treebo, have been my colleagues, right? At any given point of time in the last 7 years, my best friends have been Treebs. So, and of course, right, I've spent initially, I remember, right, the team that has been around for the last 7 years, just when I joined. Most of them are still here, right? I mean, Salil, George, Tariq, Arpit, Kapil, Sajid, Lakshmikant, all of them are still here, right? And I think initially, when we started out, right, it was very important for us to bond, right? And I remember back in 2016-17, we would hang out twice or thrice in a week, right? And we finish the day's work, go sit at a bar, go for a drive to Lonavala. We just spent a lot of time. We got to know each other really well, and that trust was there, right? I mean, you don't have to, second guess, or you don't have to. Let's say if Salil, who's the portfolio head for my region, I'm not going to second guess, or I'm not going to question him if he approves a deal, right? Even without passing that by me, because that trust is there.
And he knows that.
And of course, and another thing that as a leader that now that we've championed in our region is that every time a new guy comes, he starts off with, let's say, 100 credits of trust. Now it's up to that guy to retain those credits or to blow them up.
Yeah.
So that's the philosophy that we operate with, right? So
trust by default until the other person gives you a reason to not.
Exactly. So ऐसा कभी मौका नहीं मिला कि I've had to doubt what Salil is doing or what Arpit is doing, right? So I think that trust continued to build, and I think that also happens with their team, right? I mean, they also trust their teams by default, and I think the teams have retained that trust.
Were you the most angry with him?
Okay. So there has never been this 7 years. I have never seen that Akhil had made me angry. Yes, there are many instances that I have made Akhil angry, but no.
That I have been angry at him, but there have been instances where I have been like that he should take a little chill pill, and he should not really take so much of tension on his head and everything. So I sometimes think that he should take it a little light. That is where my thing comes from. Otherwise, I don't think I've got an opportunity to be angry.
I think one important part of trust, Akhil, which you are probably undermining, is even in this trust equation, there's like credibility, reliability, intimacy,
personal,
right? And whatever denominator is self-orientation.
Yeah.
I think one very important aspect of that trust is credibility, right? And what I have seen firsthand is your team really admiring you and strengthening their trust in you because they see you as the leader who actually knows how to get shit done. Whether it is difficult conversations with partners, whether it is having a firm grip on numbers, whether it is actually holding the pen on some new communication that needs to be created. They see you as that person. And what he's being too modest about, but outside this room he's not. So here's the secret. Akhil Gupta firmly believes and fiercely protects the notion that to his people he's Harvey Specter. Isn't that true?
Well, not really.
Come on!
So, I think I picked this up from Sid and Rahul only, right? I think it was one of the, I think, एक बहुत अच्छी cool line बोली थी इन्होंने. As a leader, you should have the ability to tell your team there's nothing you can fuck that I can't unfuck.
Yeah.
Right, and that really stuck with me, right? I may not be the best salesperson, but I may not be the best development guy or the ops guy, but if my team can do it, then so can I, right? And or if they fuck it up, I should be able to handle those consequences. So that thing has stayed with me, and if I am unable to, sort of fix anything that has been, not very, appreciable, and I would lose my sleep over it. कि यार मैं भी नहीं कर पाया ये, तो I do lose sleep over it. कि okay, fine. I mean, my team member could not get this done. If I cannot close this, then I will start having small self doubts and lose sleep over it.
But I should tell you, as the founder, sometimes the kind of, and this is again a distinction between peacetime and wartime, and when I think about it in hindsight, again it seems like one of those somewhat stupid things that you do as a founder or that you think as a founder. What Akhil does with his team, either by virtue of just demonstrating to them that it can be done or by truly becoming their best friend and solving their life's problems, whatever, one way or the other, keeping this group of people so tightly, bonded together around his leadership. Weirdly enough, sometimes and I've shared this feedback with you, so bear with me. In peacetime, that sometimes comes across as कि यार ये क्या गुटबाजी कर रखी है. I've told him कि यार why do you operate with this bunker mentality? we're not in a war. What's this thing कि यार west है. Like Pune की team, मेरी team. You can't bloody. These guys have gotten us to do like massive recalculations on this monthly regional championship we run. क्योंकि यार 0.1% आपने कहीं गलत कैलकुलेट कर दिया था, उसकी वजह से ना मैं विनर होना चाहिए था, बट ये कोई और हो गया. This guy will do that, and he will do it on behalf of his team, and I think there's a huge value to it. And like I said, it's been my mistake to in peacetime think of this as yeah, ये क्या bunker mentality है.
Yeah.
Because then you don't need it.
Yeah.
But then you realize when it's time to pick up the arms,
Yeah.
you bloody need that,
Yeah.
and you can't build it in wartime.
Yeah.
You need it to exist when you need it.
Absolutely.
And that's what he does. And I've realized that, hell yeah, I want those people to blindly kill for him and die for him.
Correct.
And it doesn't matter whether for them there is a blurred boundary between Akhil Gupta and Treebo.
Yeah.
You know, what matters is that they're willing to go out there and fight the war.
But that's the
he does
thing.
it.
Yeah, that's the thing with bunker mentality is in tough times when you have to let colleagues like that go. It takes. I've seen it happen with
Absolutely.
people. Like I see it happen with Shanky, for example, almost incapable to a fault, because that's your fellow soldier, right? And at that time, distinguishing between the company's health and your team becomes important to do, which otherwise you would never do. Did you struggle with that?
Well, two things, right? I mean, the first point that Sid mentioned, right? Why the team always supersedes for me, right? I think it's concentric circles, right? It's Treebo and then the team and everything else. So we have this famous slang in our team, right? कि हर लीडर को पता है, हर किसी को पता है कि उसका लीडर उसको कहेगा, उसकी गांड से पहले उसके लीडर की गांड है. तो I will take the bullet for my region first, then letting anybody else, then throwing anybody else under the bus, right? And everybody operates with that. So there is some sort of assurance. And to answer your question about of course letting anybody go is difficult, but I've sort of gotten used to the fact that the vision is bigger. If you have to let somebody go, I'm not going to lose a night's sleep over it. Not today.
But it comes down to judgment. It's never black and white, right? Do you hurt like leaders who operate with that mindset of keeping people super close, making them successful, having them die for you when time becomes like, I'm sure it is a much bigger struggle for them compared to, let's say, a dispassionate leader who may not have those relationships.
Yeah.
See, I mean, of course, I mean it pains, but it does not, right? If I had to pick, I'm not going to lose my sleep over it today, right? Because I know what we're building. We're trying to build an institution which is going to outlast all of us. And if we were to look at, hopefully Treebo is going to be an institution that exists, thrives for thousands of years, at least in my head. और अगर उन हज़ारों साल की बात करें और किसी के 10 साल का tenure देखें, that's inconsequential, right? I mean,
That's perspective, yeah.
doesn't matter.
I think there's, my guess would be that there's another element of it, which again you probably do unknowingly, which is that in those difficult moments when, let's say, someone's professional journey is coming to an end, that doesn't change anything about his friendships with them.
That's so difficult, man.
But that's the beauty of it. There would still be people that he tells me, so, he would hang out with people he fired.
That is so I struggle with that.
Yeah. And
I can't do
I
it.
think I don't know, maybe it's what you said earlier about just being very disciplined and very honest about explaining the why, or just the years of investment that you've put into building that personal relationship with those people. It's incredible. You're right. It's not. I mean, how do you do that as a human, right? You're not compartmentalized
Yeah.
that way. कि यार ये तो ठीक है, ये वाला party खराब हुआ है.
Yeah.
But that's one remarkable quality I find about him.
You spoke when you sent me a things that you do in a very classical. Now that I'm getting to know Akhil more, like classical preparation for the conversation, send me what are those WhatsApp messages where you have to click see more? One of those, right?
Yeah.
You spoke at length about working with the right founders, compounding of efforts with the right people, being kind to people as opposed to being aspirational with people or forcing them to work hard, or kind of danda approach that we call it. But 3-4 of your bullet points kind of circled around the theme of finding the right people to work for and with, and then identifying and recruiting great people for yourself, and then being kind to both. something that even Sid, for example, spoke about. कि whenever I talk to Akhil, कि यार तू PR responsibility उठा ले, या फिर you take on this function role of guest experience or whatever it is, you've always come back to him and said, sure, like a sync, and that's what we spoke about, which is to be solution oriented with people you work for. But I wanted to kind of probe deeper on your people orientation, and specifically this aspect of people orientation around being kind, investing in them, and just dignity of labor, your own, your founders, your teams, your partners, etc. Talk a little bit about that ethos and where it comes from and what it means to you.
So, I think everybody deserves respect, right? I mean, everybody deserves respect, and I see dignity of labor is non-existent in at least our country. And you'd be amazed by what you can accomplish by just being kind to people. And when I say kind, I don't mean cutting them slack, but just asking them how they are, if everything's all right at home, or just instead of tu tadaka, just tum aap baat kar lo, right? I mean, it pays off, and then that's when you can start commanding the respect of people around you, right? As a leader, you can either demand it, right? By default, people will respect you since you're their boss, but the way to command the respect is by being a nice person. So I've always felt that, and every person deserves to be respected for who they are, what they're doing. Or yeah, and it has paid off, right? Clearly, it has paid off for me.
But how do you handle the associated insecurity or fear of being taken for granted?
I always believe that a good leader should be able to switch between Santa Claus and the Godfather. So I can be kind.
Akhilism, is it?
I can be kind when I need to be. I can be caring at all the times. But अगर किसी की बजानी होगी तो I think should ask my team.
Of course, Akhil is not a Santa Claus, but he's a godfather in his own way. Can say a godfather in a Santa Claus way, because Akhil will never take a no for an answer. So and he has that capability of convince you in a way that you would be able to react like एक बार बात कर लिया आपने अखिल से and हाँ ठीक है हाँ ही बोलना था इस चीज़ के लिए.
Not a godfather, not a Santa Claus, but in between that he has always been a person who have guided us, who has been our elderly brother, and who knows how to take care of his team. So
I think, Akhil, before we end the conversation, I just wanted to ask you two questions. I actually wanted to ask you one question. I wanted to ask you one question, Sid. Is what have you learned about yourself in the last 7.5 years, which may have surprised you? And Sid, I'll hold your question to you separately, but this is one thing I wanted to ask you.
टफ हो गया अखिल आजकल. पहले बहुत सेंसिटिव था ऐसा लगता था मुझे, अब टफ हो गया है.
Example?
जैसे कोई भी सिचुएशन, घर में भी कोई डिसीजन लेना है, हम थोड़ा ऐसे कैसे बोलेंगे क्या बोलेंगे सोचते हैं, बोलते हैं नहीं बोलना है, ब्लैंकली बोलना है. बिल्कुल वो बात चेंजेस आ गए हैं कि अरे जो काम पसंद आ जाए वो अच्छे से करता है और यहाँ पे उसको अच्छा लग रहा है तो हम बल्कि ये सजेस्ट करते हैं कि यहीं पे रुको. और वो लिटरली सिड में बोल सकती हूँ कि वो अपना बिजनेस समझ के करता है कंपनी. कभी कभी आप नाराज होते वो नहीं देखता है, कंपनी के लिए फ़ायदा होना चाहिए, उसके लिए वो ज़्यादा मायने रखता है. तो अच्छा मन लग गया है, अच्छा है. तो फिर हम तो यही सजेस्ट करते हैं कि ट्रीबो को बढ़ाओ, इंटरनेशनली करो.
I always thought I was a very emotional person. I still am, but the nature of the work, I've realized that I can compartmentalize my emotions and just be heartless and cold when I need to be. I never thought I could do that, right? I mean, let's say if I want to have a difficult conversation with a client, with a hotel partner, with a colleague, I can do it without losing sleep or without even breaking a sweat today.
With the founder?
So far, touch wood, I haven't had to have that conversation, but
It's interesting.
So that's one thing. And I think the second thing that I realized is that I mean, my conviction in knowing that I love challenges, that has only grown more, right? I mean, I mean, I think I enjoyed myself most at Treebo when, you know, we were going through some of the most difficult times.
Look, I don't want to solve for your enjoyment anymore, okay?
So, yeah, but yeah, I think those are two things that, you know, I've sort of realized, and my conviction has only grown stronger. And also the third thing that, you know, you just have to stick around, right? I mean, you sit at the table long enough, the chips will come to you.
Sid, I wanted to ask you, what have you learned from Akhil? You clearly, obviously, from our conversations in the morning as well as this interaction, I think you clearly value in almost a priceless way what Akhil means to Treebo as an institution. Not only while he's building it, but also when it outlasts all of us, right? But what have you learned about yourself as a founder, as you know, as a colleague, because of your relationship with Akhil?
I think, to be honest, I find myself inadequate when I, when I look at folks like Akhil, just purely in terms of the resilience, the conviction with which they approach. And it might sound strange coming from the founder,
Yeah.
right? But I have no qualms in saying that, in a way, people like Akhil help sustain my belief in the mission.
Yeah.
The other thing that's incredible about Akhil, and I would dare say it's a bit of a pattern when people really stick around through thick and thin, because without it you can't do it. It's just the humility.
Yeah.
I don't think I can say about myself that I'm a humble person at all, and the value of that humility just keeps coming to surface in such compelling ways every now and then. I mean, Akhil has played multiple roles at Treebo, across, being in these territory leadership roles. For a good 3 years, he was the head of our guest experience until recently. He headed PR for us. By the way, he used to write some pretty compelling mails from the PR ID. You would think with just the right kind of nuisance in it, which would make you feel higher agency se aayi hogi. So I think the humility, and I have seen Akhil interact with a lot of colleagues who have probably joined the leadership team outside in, right, and who probably spent like a few months. And even my temptation sometimes would be to say, yaar, kaisi baatein kar rahe ho yaar? Abhi, you're very new, you'll probably figure this out, but we have seen this play out, so let it be. But in all of those moments with junior folks, with senior folks, I mean, I have no qualms in saying this, but people like Akhil, been around for so long, he is a brother to me, and he has every right and every opportunity to take the liberties of any sort, of pushing back super hard and in the most direct ways, rather than really kind of toning it down, etc.
Yeah.
But just the humility of considering a task as a task, being open to the idea that there is learning in this for me, being open to the idea that indeed I could be contributing to the organization in various different ways, and I need to be open to it, because if I won't, then who will? I think that's incredible. I don't think I can pull that off at all myself. So that's been a huge learning.
Akhil, a lot of people who watch the Barbershop are people who want to start up on their own or want to be a part of startups. People who want to actually emulate you in all the goodness and the rage and serenity that you embody. Would love for you to kind of talk about, or have, if you have a word of encouragement, advice, caution, wisdom, whatever you want to call it, but to this 24, 25, 26-year-old, or actually, it could be any age. Age is actually not a thing, but someone who's on the fence of this world, is enamored by it, wants to jump in. Anything that you would want to say to them?
So, I mean, for anybody who is perhaps, thinking of taking up a job at a startup, right, I would say do it, because I think the learnings would be immense. My first job was not with a startup, was with a typical company. And
where were you?
I was with Venky's. That was my first job.
Balas?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So my first role required me to be part of the team that was setting up a feed plant in Vietnam. So
You ever go to the Bala's New Year party?
thankfully not. So yeah, so I realized that the kind of learnings you get in a startup, a year in a startup is perhaps, let's say, 3 or 4 years in a regular company, right? And the learnings are immense. You get to do a lot of things, you get to learn a lot of things. So you do that and pick the right team, pick the right founders, and pick a startup that is actually a business, right? I mean, I've made that mistake a couple of times ki, not to belittle anyone, but there are so many startups जिनको पता ही नहीं है कि वो मतलब पैसा कैसे बनाने वाले हैं. But they are there, right? I mean, they are startups. So if you are in for the long run, work for a startup that is actually making money, that is actually adding value, changing, impacting the lives of people, right? उसमें काम करो, अच्छे लोगों के साथ काम करो, you will get to have the time of your life.
बढ़िया. Thank you so much, Sid. Akhil, this has been such a privilege to sit across from both of you. And Akhil, I think thank you so much for taking the time to tell us your point of view. I think you were very controlled. I think when you went to the washroom, Sid was saying, "Yeah, Akhil is being very measured." I said, "No, it's okay. I think there's a serenity part of him coming out, but it's given me a lot to kind of digest and chew on. But I can see where the special nature of Treebo derives a lot of its DNA is from your leadership and tutelage both. Of course, Rahul and Sid are people I hold in very high regard for since times before Treebo even existed. But to see that you have taken on the mantle from them and then built out your own bunker, as Sid calls it, is amazing. So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing so generously and candidly with the Barbershop audience. I think everyone benefits in wildly exciting ways. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a privilege. Thank you.
One piece of advice for him.
Okay, he have to be a little cool-headed. So sometimes he's almost cool-headed, but when we talk about work, he is not. So I would ask him to be cool-headed when it comes to work.
I'll just say one thing. I'll ask Akhil Gupta, please Sunday को काम करना बंद कीजिए ताकि हम लोग भी काम नहीं कर सकते. Because of he as a head of the Pune region, he is working on Sunday, and obviously we also have to work on Sunday for most of the time. But that is the only one thing which I'll say. Apart from this, yes, whatever he does, he's doing his best so far.
Akhil, take a chill pill. Just relax. You don't have to work so much. नहीं सब बंद हो जाएगा. हम भी देख रहे हैं, हमें भी काम आता है. Just trust on us. आप एक दिन रेस्ट ले लोगे, थोड़े दिन वेकेशन पे चले जाओगे, कुछ नहीं चेंज होने वाला. So just take a chill pill.